Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for the playing of
the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast
with your host, the 2023 IBWAA Podcast Host of the Year, Jana, and her big brother, Jeff. It was a song from back in the teens or 20s, a little Ford Rambler rolled along. It's kind of what I feel like. And the little baseball podcast rolled along. And that's what we're doing. Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast back in your ears. Lots of fun today. We got a special guest to talk about a great book we both recently read. So we're going to get to that here in just a second. Dodgers, Angels, around baseball, and we'll talk about a few other things that are going on. College baseball. Next week we will be off, and we will pick everything up the following week, and hit all the missed spots and update what we need to update. Find us on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A.
And on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB with the A.
Hit up our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. Check the Fanatics links to buy yourself some new gear. They still have the Armed Forces Day hats, and some of them look really cool. I think it has to do with the logo.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are available. That'll help the show. You can also donate to the show through the Ko-fi app. Feel free. Hit us up on social media or send us a direct message or an email, Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast at gmail.com. If you have anything to say, any suggestions.
Yeah, we want to hear it all.
We do. Now it's time for us to hustle off. You know, Jen and I love to read, and especially baseball books, and we got to read a great one recently, and even better, we welcome to this episode of the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast, the New York Times best-selling author of the New York Times best-selling book, Charle Hustle, The Rise and Fall of Pete Rose and the Last Glory Days of Baseball. The book is available wherever you buy your books, and we welcome Keith O'Brien. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. So, probably a question you've answered a 1,000 times by now, but you're from Cincinnati, right? Originally.
That's right.
And you grew up with Pete Rose for some part of that time frame while you were, growing up watching that. Why write about Pete, and why now of all times?
Well, couple reasons. One, I mean, this feels to me like a time for reckoning. There's the old sports cliche that, an athlete is day to day with a groin injury or a shoulder injury. We're all day to day, all of us.
Right.
But when you're, in your 80s, as Pete Rose is, and as those around him are, that notion of being day to day is especially present. And so it felt like a time for reckoning. Two, the world has changed in the 35 years since Pete Rose has been banned from baseball. And specifically, it's changed a great deal in the past 6 years with the legalization of sports gambling. And so what better time to revisit the story of one of our most notorious gamblers than now? And then, thirdly, as you mentioned, Jeff, I'm born and raised in Cincinnati in the 1970s and 80s. I believed that if I could use my Cincinnati connections and knowledge to get into Pete Rose's inner circle and to get access to Pete Rose himself, then I would be able to tell a story that, frankly, we haven't heard before, and so that is why I wanted to write the book.
Well, you definitely do that because you start from, early days of Pete, how he progresses through the struggles, the challenges that he had, building up. I mean, I remember as a kid watching him. I watched him run over Ray Fosse in an all-star game. When I played Little League Baseball, I tried sliding head first, always in the Pete Rose crouch batting stance. I remember my coach yelling at me, telling me, "There's only one Pete Rose, and you ain't him. Don't slide like that ever again." And I never did. But it is interesting because you're right. A lot of the stuff that we read, if you only see the surface, you miss out that there is a lot of context to how Pete got where he was. Not even just as the gambler that he ends up as everybody sees him, but even just becoming a ball player at the lowest levels.
Well, that is true. One interesting thing that I learned in the writing of my book and the research for it is that, Pete Rose was never the best player on his own teams as a child on the west side of Cincinnati. He was never the best player on his own teams at Western Hills High School, where he attended high school on the west side of Cincinnati. And I think, by rights, today, he probably doesn't make the major leagues. In 1960, having used up all of his athletic eligibility at his high school, but repeating a grade and returning for a fifth year, Pete can no longer play at the high school and is playing baseball in an amateur men's league in just south of Dayton, Ohio. And in the spring of 1960 as a senior. And it's there that he goes on a bit of a hitting streak. He bats like 500 that spring. And that sounds great and all, but right now across America, there are seniors in high school that are batting 500. It happens. So that alone doesn't get you much of anything. But Pete has a connection. His Uncle Buddy Blowbaum, is his mother's brother, had once played minor league baseball for the Cedar Rapids Bunnies in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And, Uncle Buddy has one season in Cedar Rapids and comes back for a second minor league season with the Peoria Tractors. He injures himself in the very first game, and that's the end of Uncle Buddy's minor league career. It's over. But in that brief time in the minors, Uncle Buddy plays baseball in Cedar Rapids with a man named Phil Segui. Phil Segui will have a long minor league career, both as a player, then as a player manager, then as a manager. And by the late 1950s, Phil Segui is hired to be the farm director, essentially the minor league director for the Cincinnati Reds. So Uncle Buddy basically calls in a favor to his old teammate Phil Segui, and Phil Segui gives Pete Rose a spot on the Geneva Redlegs in the New York Penn League. This is A ball, and not only is it A ball, it is a level of A ball that doesn't even exist anymore. It was so low, and so were it not for those kind of connections, who knows if we even ever hear the name Pete Rose. And I did really begin to think of it that way, that it's frankly a miracle that he ever got out of the West Side. It's a miracle that we ever knew his name in the first place.
One of the things I really appreciated about your book was learning more about Pete Rose, the down and dirty, even from the very beginning, to know that gambling was always part of his life from the time he was a kid. pitching pennies and doing those type of things. And because I always, when I think of Pete Rose, I'm like, I only look at the ball player. And so I really appreciate it in your book how we see that other side of Pete Rose and who he was, and not just as a ball player, but as a person.
Yeah, and thanks, Jenna. And that's one thing I wanted to do. This book is the story of the rise and fall of Pete Rose, but it is not a simple rise and a simple fall. It's not like, for 15, 20 years, he's living this perfect life and then suddenly he makes poor decisions and it's over. No, the more interesting thing is that, the problems he's going to get into in the late 1980s are really set into motion decades earlier. And you're absolutely right. He grows up on the west side of Cincinnati, a working class part of Cincinnati, in a neighborhood where gambling is part of the landscape. You mentioned, he's gambling outside the walls of the tavern down the hills from his house, pitching pennies against the wall. Men are gambling inside. Pete Rose's father played semi-pro football on the weekends in the 40s and 50s. And the men would meet in the parking lot before the game and wager on the game and then go play it. And what does Pete Rose's father love more than, or just as much as going to his son's baseball games? He loves going to the racetrack, the horse track in Cincinnati. And I found it fascinating that, when you talk to Pete Rose, as I did, and you talk to him about his childhood, he will tell you that some of his fondest memories of his childhood were going to the racetrack with his dad, cheering for his daddy's horse to win. And so, gambling's part of his family. It's part of his neighborhood. It's part of his culture. It's part of the West Side. And, Pete Rose loves to gamble. And that's well known in Cincinnati by at least the early 1970s, which is, 20 years before he's going to get in trouble.
Do you think that that's kind of one of the reasons, because people knew his love of gambling, they saw him at the horse track, that it kind of was not something that was really brought up that much? They weren't, I don't say swept, I guess maybe kind of swept under the rug, but they just didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. It was like, oh, that's Pete.
Yeah. It was dismissed as that's Pete. And obviously what he was doing at the racetrack is legal. It's not against the rules, it's not against the law. Of course he could go to the racetrack, before a game and then report to the ballpark and play. Nothing wrong with it. But it did make headlines in Cincinnati because he was there a lot. There were letters to the editor, by at least 1970, people complaining that Pete's spending so much time at the racetrack. I think the bigger problem, though, really, is that when he does begin to branch out and does begin to gamble with bookies and gamble on sports, and then gamble on baseball, he's so big that who's going to tell him no? Who's going to tell him to stop? And I think that's a critical thing. I think in the last 35 years since Pete Rose has been banned from baseball, I think we have forgotten who he really was. And the fact is he was an American icon. He wasn't just one of the best players in baseball. He was one of the most famous Americans, period. And so he was a massive star who transcended the game. And I think we've forgotten that. In the last 35 years, as Pete Rose has been banned and made mistake after mistake after mistake off the field, he's sort of become a caricature of himself. And so, part of the structure of the book and the writing of the book was going back and telling this story of this epic rise to the mountaintop, because Pete Rose will make it to the mountaintop of American life. And then through his own choices, his own decisions, his own addictions, he's going to lose it all.
It seemed like, too, that at times, you talk about all the gambling, I think when he was in, what was it called? A triple header, he'd go do after the day was over at spring training. We're going to hit this place, hit the dog track. We're going to hit the racetrack and all that. But it seemed as that time went, when things seemed to be at the edge of being the worst for him personally, he tend to be at his best on the field. And, is that, where do you think that came from, that it was like, hey, I'm able to focus all this in here as he's devolving into eventually betting on baseball, which is, pushing that limit. He knows he shouldn't. But, what is it? His life kind of falls apart around him, and, he just keeps moving on as long as he can gamble and play baseball.
Yeah, he had a laser focus in everything he did. When he was gambling, that's what he was doing. And when he was playing baseball, that's what he was doing. And he was able to separate the two and separate at times the tornado of darkness that he was creating off the field, and wall that off from whatever he was doing on the field. And teammates noticed even at the time. I interviewed for this book not just Pete Rose, but dozens of former teammates and opponents of him in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And all these guys will tell you that, they're just like us. They bring their problems to work just like us. And so, if they were having financial difficulties or problems with their marriage, they would bring that to the ballpark just like we might to our own workplace. And they'd be thinking about it even while they're playing the game. And Pete Rose was simply not like that. When he walked into the ballpark, everything else was gone. And he was just there to play baseball. And so, he was able to sort of live two different lives. And nowhere is that more apparent than the spring and summer of 1978. Pete Rose at this point is 37 years old. He that spring he's going to record his 3,000th hit, a hit that ensures, it would seem, his future enshrinement in the Hall of Fame. And while that is happening, his marriage is in full implosion, due to affairs he's having off the field. His longtime mistress that summer is giving birth to a child that he will not acknowledge until much later, and only then under duress in court. And aside from his personal problems, based on my reporting, sometime in the spring or early summer of 1978, there is some kind of secret meeting, an intervention that happens in the office of Reds president Dick Wagner. And at this meeting before a game is Dick Wagner, Pete Rose, and at least one official from Major League Baseball. And the discussion that day is about gambling and debts and bookies. 1978. This is 11 years before Pete's gambling on baseball will ultimately make scandalous headlines across the country and around the world and lead to his banishment. And this is 1978. And so, while all this is happening, not only does he record his 3,000th hit, like I said before, he goes on the longest consecutive hit game streak that we have seen since 1941, 44 games with a hit that summer. This is a streak that will fall 12 games short of the all-time record, 56 games by Joe DiMaggio. But it is a notable streak because 82 years later, 83 years later, no one has come close to 41 games. That is the 44 games. That's the longest hit streak since 1941.
Yeah, he is. And, part of the title of the book, The Last Glory Days of Baseball, fits in there too, because when you really think about Pete Rose, he really, before he ever got a shot at breaking Ty Cobb's hit record, should have been out of baseball. And or like current times, we're never going to see anybody hit that. We're like even wondering if anybody will get to 3,000 again. There's some guys close, but guys aren't staying for the time and playing at a high level. He was able to push himself into his 40s to facilitate him getting to to the hit record, to the 40, 4,200 and what is it, 56? I can't remember.
Yeah, that's right. That's the number. It's not just that they won't play that long, because maybe they will. I mean, certainly the medicine, the science, the training, the off-field regimens are all far more well known today and pursued by every top athlete. Pete Rose wasn't engaging in any kind of off-season regimen, not until the early 80s when he was 40 years old. So there's a possibility that players could play long enough to get to 42, 56. The difference is we're not playing baseball like we used to. Analytics, the analytic game tells a player, don't try to hit a single, try to hit a double, or try to hit a home run or strike out. And of course, Pete Rose and many other people in those days did not play the game in that way. Pete Rose, especially if he got two strikes, would choke up and just try to poke something through the hole between first and second and get on base, and then wreak havoc on the bases. And so the way we play baseball has changed, and that to me is a major problem for baseball. League batting averages have been declining for 20 years. They're in a full crater descent. And strikeouts, meanwhile, are on the rise. And that is one reason why we saw the rule changes introduced a year ago, that banned the shift, expanded the size of the bases themselves, and tried to encourage the kind of movement and hitting that baseball used to be. But I think you're right, Jeff. I mean, you're just looking at the numbers. When we started this season here in 2024, the career active hit leader was Freddie Freeman, a really good player. If Freddie Freeman has, for the next 3 to 5 years, the kind of season he's had for the last 5, Freddie Freeman might be a Hall of Famer. But when Freddie Freeman starts this season at age 34, he starts it with 2,115 hits. And so even if Freddie were to have this year and for the next 10 years, the kind of season that he's had for the past 3 at the peak of his career, and he has 187, 190 hits a year for the next decade, Freddie Freeman is still going to come up short and not pass Pete Rose. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. Pete Rose had numerous seasons of over 200 hits. The other thing is he also played now, and when you bring Freddie Freeman up, he's a good example here in as a comp, is that Freddie plays, as close to 162 games a year that they'll let him. Pete played every game. He didn't take any time off. He didn't, and of course those guys played through injury and stuff like that as well. So it's like, it really does show, like you said, the differences between where we were and, and you see some players, but you don't see players hustle like Pete Rose. You don't see them going and playing hard nose all the time. when you can be a guy that's, my grandfather used to call guys on other teams that would show off, oh, another hot dog. Pete Rose was one guy, he never called that. And my grandfather grew up a Dodger fan, hated the Reds, but he respected how Pete Rose played the game. And, we don't see that. We see guys that play hard. We talk about, like current players. We see Shohei Ohtani, somebody that seems to be really dedicated to the game and that, but I don't see in him what I saw or what most of us saw in Pete Rose.
Well, but here's the reality, there was nobody even playing like Pete Rose back in the 60s and 70s and 80s at a time when everybody, especially in those early years in the 60s and 70s, were playing for the next year's contract. No one had free agent money. No one had a guaranteed deal. Everybody was playing on a one-year deal. And even if you were a big-time star, if you struggled for a year, the owner of your team could dock your pay. And you would take a pay cut going into the following season. You had no recourse to fight that because you couldn't go out on the open market. You were stuck in San Francisco or Chicago or New York or whoever you were playing for. And so even in those days, when, just by definition, guys were playing harder and sliding harder to break up double plays, etc., Pete Rose was an anomaly. He stood out even then. They thought he was a lunatic then. And so I don't even know what we would do with a player like Pete Rose today.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? So one of the things there in the book is it feels like at the one point where Peter Ueberroth is still the commissioner, Bart Giamatti is the NL president at the time. Fay Vincent is working in there. Of course, he becomes, the successor to Bart Giamatti as the commissioner. They have a meeting with Pete and kind of put it out there like, hey, just tell us what's going on. And it almost feels like they were willing to kind of slide it under the rug a little bit. Maybe something was going to happen, but they didn't want it to get to the point that it actually got to. Does that kind of how it played out? I mean, that's how it read to me. I don't know if that's exactly.
Well, I think the most important thing to know for starters is it's only because Sports Illustrated is digging into a tip that Pete Rose is betting on baseball, that Major League Baseball starts to take an interest. Again, based on my reporting, as far back as 1978, officials inside the front office of Major League Baseball were aware that Pete Rose was running with gamblers and bookies and had debts to bookies. So in early 1989, Peter Ueberroth, then the outgoing commissioner, catches wind of a rumor that Sports Illustrated has a tip that Pete Rose has been betting on baseball, and they're digging into it. And so Ueberroth huddles with Giamatti, then the National League president, about to become commissioner, and Giamatti's handpicked deputy, Fay Vincent. And Giamatti and Vincent and Ueberroth all agree that they need to call Pete to New York and they need to have a frank discussion with them about what's happening here. They can't be caught flat-footed, with Sports Illustrated digging around. And this meeting initially is a secret meeting. Based on my reporting, this isn't opinion. Based on my reporting, if Rose is honest that day in the meeting, it is different. The whole narrative is different. And I don't mean to suggest that he wouldn't have been suspended or that he wouldn't have been banished or in some way. I think he would have been. Bart Giamatti in particular, the incoming commissioner, was an idealist. He was proud of being an idealist. He would not have tolerated that. But I don't think that whatever punishment would have been handed down would be the kind of punishment that we're still sorting through and living with 35 years later. Because, another thing we forgot about Pete Rose is that this was bad for baseball in 1989. This was bad for the game. And so if they could have had a press conference or a decision that spared baseball in some way the grief that was to come, they absolutely would have. But that's not going to happen because Rose lies that day in the secret meeting. He says, no, of course he hasn't been betting on baseball. No, of course he hasn't been betting on the Reds. And Fay Vincent and Bart Giamatti in particular know that they can't take Rose's word for it, even though they believe him that day, find him believable. They can't take his word for it because Sports Illustrated might be learning something else. So Major League Baseball hires an outside independent counsel by the name of John Dowd to dig into these allegations, basically to run his own investigation while Sports Illustrated is doing whatever the magazine is doing. And that is, the key decision here, because John Dowd is highly overqualified for this particular job. And I say that with respect. John Dowd has been a lawyer in the U.S. Justice Department. He has done investigations that have put real mobsters and congressmen under indictment. Dowd will say later this was one of the easiest cases he ever took on. And in a matter of 8 to 10 weeks, John Dowd and his team of investigators unravels years of Pete Rose's lies.
I think when I was reading this book, getting to know more about Pete Rose, his life outside of baseball, and I've always thought Pete Rose belongs in the Hall of Fame. But then I read your book and I think, do I only look at the ball player and to belong in the Hall of Fame? Or because if I'm reading your book and I'm reading all about Pete Rose and the guy that, what he's done in his life, all these things, affairs and gambling. I mean, he just wasn't that, outside of baseball, I guess, a great guy. I was like, during the book, I'm like, maybe I changed my mind. Maybe he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. But I still believe, though, even after reading your book and having been able to digest it, I still believe on his baseball merits, not on his life merits, but on his baseball merits, I guess baseball life merits, he does belong in the Hall. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. So, one key reason why my book, Charle Hustle, is unique is that it isn't about taking sides. Mm-hmm. I didn't write the book to make an argument for Pete Rose. I didn't write the book to make an argument against Pete Rose. I tried to look at his story through the prism of history, tell that story with granular reporting and unprecedented access and documents and records, and then write that story and let people come to their own conclusion. Because, Pete Rose and the Hall of Fame and that whole thing is, one of the great late night sports debates. We've all had it. And so, the book doesn't take sides, but of course, like any fan, I have my own personal feelings. And I will say that probably like a lot of people, I have probably felt every emotion about Pete Rose and the Hall of Fame over the past 35 years. The way I think about it now is simply that we've lost perspective. I think we like to put our most famous athletes on pedestals. I think we like to ascribe moral values to them that they may or may not have. And these are pedestals that they may or may not deserve. And the fact is, we just don't know that much about our athletic heroes. I would submit we know even less today in 2024 about our athletic heroes than we did 40 years ago because of the limited access that reporters have to our most famous athletic stars. And so for all those reasons, I now believe that when it comes to Pete Rose and all of baseball's ne'er-do-wells, and by that I mean Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds and Alex Rodriguez and all of the so-called steroid era guys, I feel like we should enshrine them into the Hall of Fame if what they did on the field was enough. And then if what they did off the field is so problematic, then let's put it on the plaque at Cooperstown right next to their accomplishments. That's my feeling. But the bigger philosophical question that you've hit upon is just what are we measuring when we discuss or vote for the Hall of Fame? Are we measuring the lives that they've lived, or are we measuring the art that they created? And this discussion about life and art is one that Bart Giamatti himself, the commissioner of baseball, identified on the day that Pete Rose was banned in August 1989. On that day in August 1989, when Pete Rose signs the document agreeing to his own banishment, he does so knowing full well that 2 years later in 1991, his name's going to appear on the ballot at Cooperstown. There was no rule that barred that from happening. Indeed, when Pete signs it, he believes full well his name will be there, and he thinks he'll be elected. And on this day, because of that, reporters ask Giamatti, what are we to do with Pete when he does appear on the ballot? And Giamatti says that he'll do nothing to change that Pete's name will appear there just like everyone else's. And he says he looks forward to seeing how reporters will judge life and art. But we never get to have that discussion with Pete Rose because in February 1991, about 10 months before Pete's name would have appeared on the ballot, the National Baseball Hall of Fame changes the rules and says that only eligible players are eligible for the Hall of Fame. It's effectively the Pete Rose corollary, and it removes Pete Rose from the ballot.
Yeah, I remember that, and I'm with. In any Hall of Fame, if you have a Hall of Fame that says specifically Baseball Hall of Fame, then it wasn't the Gambling Hall of Fame. He certainly wouldn't have made it in there. He wasn't that, overall wasn't that great. But as a baseball player, singularly, and as you said, when we look at art, are there artists that we see in museums that were horrible people, but we still go or we still talk about their works and we celebrate those? I have one more question for you about the book, and it's kind of you spent some time with Pete in Las Vegas, right? And Pete, has through the years has finally, admitted, I think hesitantly, most of the time, yes, I bet on baseball. And I'm sorry I bet on baseball. Do you think that he is sorry that he bet on baseball, or that he's sorry that he ever admitted he bet on baseball?
I believe that Pete Rose is sorry that he bet on baseball. And having had access to Pete, at least for a while, he hasn't called me back in quite some time. I can tell you that Pete also feels that he's apologized for it and he's handled it, and he doesn't know why we're still talking about it. And I believe that's also genuine. He thinks he's apologized, and he's unclear why we all haven't moved on. But the thing is that Pete never really apologized or reckoned with what he did in the way that we want people to apologize and reckon when they have gone so wrong. And we want that, of course, from our stars and our famous people. But in fairness, we just want that from people in our own lives. When someone does us wrong, a friend, a loved one, we want what feels like a genuine apology. We want something that feels like an earnest, reckoning with what happened. And the fact is, Pete Rose lies in 1989 when he's confronted about his gambling. He lies for 15 years. Those lies hurt lots of people. It hurts Major League Baseball. It hurts the city of Cincinnati. It hurts the Cincinnati Reds. It hurts the memory of Bart Giamatti. It hurts some of Pete's closest friends. At least one man will go to prison in the early 1990s because he is too loyal to Pete Rose to tell John Dowd and his investigators what he knows to be true. So his lies hurt lots of people. And then, when he finally does admit what I think any objective fan knew had to be true, that yes, he had bet on baseball, and yes, he had bet on the Reds. He does so in a memoir. It came out in 2004. Now, Pete Rose has been criticized for lots of things. I would argue, in general, Pete has earned all the criticism he gets. But this criticism that, he finally tells the truth in a memoir, to me, is not necessary. I mean, a lot of people write memoirs that reckon with the past. I think the real problem is that Pete Rose's 2004 memoir doesn't really do that. It's sort of a ham-handed apology while picking fights over other things that were part of the investigation. And so, in my opinion, he didn't really reckon with it. I think that's how most people feel. And, in credit to Pete Rose for a moment, in the 27 hours of recorded interviews that I did with him for this book, he did, talk about things and explain things that he has never talked about or explained before. But ultimately, with me, he did shut down, and he did stop calling me back, and I don't know why that is. I can only speculate, and my speculation is simply that I was pushing him, and I maybe pushed him as far as he was willing to go.
Well, you got a lot out of it. It's a great book. We thank you for writing it. It was, I agree. It was something that, especially those of us who, love baseball and grew up with Pete Rose. It definitely gave me a different perspective on him as to other just being a hard-nosed baseball player, that'll take out a guy in an all-star game. That's how competitive he was. It is a tragedy that he took the purest thing he had in his life, which was baseball, and he soiled it to that point. And I guess, if I was him, I would think that's probably a fate worse than not making it in the Hall of Fame. He's got to carry that with him. This was, I worked so hard to be here, and then I let this other side of me throw it all away. So once again, we appreciate you, stopping in with us here. The book is called Charle Hustle, The Rise and Fall of Pete Rose and the Last Glory Days of Baseball. It's available anywhere you buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of those great places. If they want to follow you, it's at KeithOB on Twitter, right?
That's right.
And KeithOB.com for your website, right?
You got it.
All right. Well, We would love to have you back if you write another baseball book or anything. I know you have some other books out there, and if they're as good as this one, I need to add them to my reading list. So,
thank you so much for having me, guys. It was a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
Once again, thanks to Keith O'Brien for stopping in and talking about Pete Rose and his latest book. If you have any questions, I'm sure we'll be posting up there about it on and a link as to what the book is and all that with our social media director. She laughs every time I say that, but there's two of us, and that's her part of the job when we do this stuff. I do this technical stuff on this side. She handles that part. Anyway, Dodgers found themselves on the losing end of a series with the Padregs, and they said, how can we make up for this? Let's go to San Francisco, which is not always the best way to try to make up for a bad series, is to go against one of your most hated rivals. This week, we're talking San Francisco and then their return home to take on Cincinnati for 4, my favorite series length. Pretty good week of baseball, I would say.
Yeah, the Dodgers had a good week of baseball, good bounce back up in San Francisco. First game, Zinnings, which can always be iffy for the Dodgers and for their fans, because I'm always like, no, not Zinnings. But it worked out in this case. Will Smith hit a 2-run double in the 10th to win the game. Mookie Betts had his 50th career leadoff home run. And Kike Hernandez came off the bench to hit a pinch hit home run in the 7th that tied the game 4-4. Then, like I said, Zinnings go to 10. And Will Smith hit that 2-run double and won the game. Yamamoto was on the mound. Didn't look too bad. Only goes 5 2/3 innings. So, and you know, the thing about Yamamoto, and I kind of feel bad for him, is and it's probably because of his contract, but he's so scrutinized. Every start is scrutinized. And so even if it's, decent, this, like I said, wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. But it's like he's under the microscope all the time.
I got a new perspective on him and his thing. A couple things. Gavin Stone and Yamamoto are the same age. And I know that Gavin Stone's homegrown coming up. We expect him to be. You paid $325 million for a pitcher who has pitched for a few years in Japan. You're like, this guy should be a finished product, but he's not. He's 25. He is a rookie. He's coming up. He'll be in the running for rookie of the year if he's, depending on his numbers. He's learning how to compete at this level, just like Gavin Stone is. Gavin Stone still hasn't figured it all out. He's getting better, but Yamamoto is doing the same thing. And when I started looking at it from that standpoint, and I was watching, I went back and looked at some highlights and watched his pitch selections. The guys can throw like 10 different pitches. So it's like he can, and like on, one outing, he may not give you all of his best stuff.
Mm-hmm, right.
And I like that because if he's able to get through, have a decent outing, and not show you his best stuff, when you see him down the road when it really matters, and he's got some of those mystery pitches, like how does that do that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's the other thing is he does keep the hitters guessing because they don't know what he's going to throw.
Yeah, and hitters today, I don't know that I've seen any hitter, maybe Shohei, but even then, we were talking about Pete Rose, in the last segment. Pitchers would say, I have no problem. I'm not worried about that guy or that guy. I'll just change something up. The only one that always remembers everything I do is Pete Rose.
Mm-hmm, right.
And there's not a lot of hitters that do that now. where they're so focused on hitting that they know how to, and they figured out the tendencies of any particular pitcher, and the pitchers know that, and they just, they all just try to stay away and get you to chase after bad pitches.
Right. Yeah.
So, and Yamamoto can build that too.
Yeah, he could. I was just thinking of Pete Rose and how, and he said this in an interview, I think it was when he was doing the playoffs, and he would say, well, if they, I would watch him, what they were going to throw. So I'd move up in the box, or I'd move back in the box, or I'd move, I'd be in the middle. So he was constantly, and you don't see that.
No, I saw him anymore. I saw that like a clip that was in between. And eventually he did say that on air. But the first time I saw it, he was talking to A-Rod and Frank Thomas.
Right.
Two guys who were good hitters. And they both, in their heads, are like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
I could have, A-Rod, for as good of his stats were, could have been exponentially better had he thought about those things.
Right.
Frank Thomas, could have benefited quite a few times probably from taking that kind of advice.
Yeah. You just don't see the hitters doing that. And I think for Yamamoto, as he continues to feel more comfortable pitching in MLB, he's only going to get better. But you see guys, when he strikes them out, they have such a puzzled look on their face. Like, what was that? Like, what, where did that ball go or come from? Or what was that? So, right. But Dodgers win. And the next night they have a great game, 10-2. They just roll over the Giants. Gavin Stone pitches, goes 6 innings. And the guy who gives up one of the runs is, what's this, Chris Bott? What's his name?
Well, Nabel.
Yeah. Well,
Nabel Christmet or Christmas.
Yeah. That's right. Anyway, he's DFA'd. He's gone. Shohei had a solo home run in that game. It was and an RBI double, 446-foot longest hit home run in 2 years. And after he hit it, people were like, that's Barry Bonds territory where he hit that ball. And then, the Dodgers, I guess they were tired. Logan Webb, the Dodger hater, was on the mound. And I think he's probably the strongest pitcher of the three that they faced. He was a Cy Young candidate. It probably still is this season. I haven't really paid a lot of attention to him. Well, he kept the Dodgers scoreless through 6. Eliezer Hernandez was called up from Oklahoma City. Eliezer, I think. Yeah. His first, making his first start in the first start in the majors. Hadn't been in the majors since 2022. Spent all of last year in the, and I think it was with Miami. Then spent all of last year in the minors and started off this season in the minors at Oklahoma City. Yeah, so he shows up. Dodgers lose this game 4-1, but they did see some good things from Hernandez. He was able to go 6 innings, gives up the 4 hits, but didn't, was decent enough that I think they felt like they can work with him. They can, kind of get things mechanically right or whatever they need to do. So they were pleased with that. Max Muncy, he drove in the lone run with a sac fly in the 8th. So that wraps up. With the Eliezer, really 6 innings. Yeah. You look at it when you compare him to just the line, obviously different pitchers, but 5 2/3, 4 runs and 5 hits for Yamamoto. He comes in, he pitched 6 innings, gave up 4 hits and 3 runs. They're very similar. Stone gave up 5 hits in that game. He's in a spot that's good for them. They need somebody like that. They can spot start maybe, and they can keep working with him because we still don't know exactly how everything's going to play out, as time goes. Right. Although maybe we saw
a little shining light, some break in the clouds. We'll talk about that during the Cincinnati series.
Yeah. So Dodgers played that third game. It was a night game. They get back to LA and it's 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. They play the Reds for a 4-game series. They open up that series. And I think it showed. I think that maybe they didn't get enough sleep the night before. But it also did not help that Elly De La Cruz, who was born in LA and knows everything about LA because he plays
It's his city.
It's his city.
He owns LA. Didn't he say that?
He did. He said he was born there. He owns it. It's his city. And the reason he knows it's his city is because he plays Grand Theft Auto or GTA.
I've been looking for the receipt. I called LA City Council or the City Hall, to see if they had the receipt on file from where Elly De La Cruz is the owner. Does he have the deed? It felt like it in that first game.
In that first game, because he was 4 for 4 with, this is what gets me even more, 4 steals.
Oh, yeah. Seems like he was
4 stolen bases. And I got to say, there's certain guys that I watch play and they annoy me. I've said it over and over. Fernando Tatis annoys me when he runs the bases after a home run. There's something about Elly De La Cruz that he's just fun to watch.
Yeah,
he's just out there and he's just having fun and you just smile because, he's such a ball of energy.
Oh yeah. And he's always smiling, like you said. And you're right. The other day, I'd kind of blown off Tatis Jr. He's been having a good year. I figured eventually to get back to it after that ringworm episode. But every time that I see him hit a home run and he's getting to third base, no matter who he's playing, I want to throw something at him when he gets to third base.
Yes.
When he goes to hesitate, I want to hit him in the head and just remember League of Their Own where they throw the glove or something or a ball and he hits Stillwell in the head. And he just kind of staggers and falls over. That's what I want to see.
So, first game. And also we see that Tyler Glasnow is human. Doesn't have a great start in this game.
All I could do was scream on my TV and go, we spent this much money on him. Oh, my God.
Can't believe it. He does get 8 strikeouts, but that's 8. Come on. He's had 4 games that are double-digit strikeouts. He should be throwing double-digit strikeouts every single game.
Didn't he give up 2 home runs in the game?
Only 1.
Oh, only 1. Okay. So he gives up 1. Oh, I was thinking because Tyler Stevenson, who hit the home run off of him, also would hit a home run the next night. That's what I guess I was confusing.
Yeah. But in this game, there was just nothing, the Dodgers couldn't get anything done offensively. No. So next day, Shohei Ohtani Day in Los Angeles. The LA City Council proclaimed May 17th as Shohei Ohtani Day for as long as he plays for LA. So the next 10 years, you will celebrate Shohei Ohtani Day on May 17th. Now, the travesty is there is no Clayton Kershaw Day.
No, I thought for sure there was one. Justin Turner has one, which we know why. Justin Turner, and honestly, from the standpoint of what Justin Turner's done around LA compared to what we know Clayton Kershaw's done around LA, Clayton Kershaw doesn't even, and he'll even admit to that, doesn't hold a candle to what the Turners have done.
Oh, yeah. No.
And then just last year, they finally did Fernando Valenzuela Day.
Right.
And he should have had one a long time ago. But Clayton Kershaw, I'm sure that if it doesn't happen soon, Probably when he finally retires,
Yeah.
they'll do that for him. But they got to do something. I'm surprised there's not one already. Maybe we should figure out what do we need to do to
Let's
get
a campaign. Yeah.
to get that submitted so he can have his day.
Yes, we need that. Well, Shohei was all smiles, and he had 2 RBIs, hit a home run on his day.
By the way, I'm living in my car now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I bought a Shohei bobblehead off of
Oh.
the internet, and now I can't afford to pay rent.
Well, that was what crazy. So that was the night before was Shohei Ohtani bobblehead. And there are 40, that's for the first 40,000 fans. They had the jersey home jersey white. And then mixed in, there was about 2,000, maybe not even that, of the gray away. And people were getting them, and then immediately you were seeing them on eBay for 3,000, 5,000. I mean, crazy. I did see one where somebody had gotten the white jersey, the home jersey, and then they painted theirs gray. So, yeah.
Anyway, that's, here's 2 things that, the Dodgers, when they do bobblehead nights or giveaways, first 40,000 fans. When the Angels do it, it's the first 20,000 fans.
Mm.
And they barely do any bobbleheads down there.
Yeah.
The Dodgers do a lot of bobblehead nights.
They do. Yeah.
And if we could get one of everyone that comes out every season, there's multiple Clayton Kershaws,
right?
There's multiple others, but we've got a few between the 2 of us, and I think a couple times I just sent you the one that I had because you've got the bigger collection, so I defer to that.
Oh.
But yeah, people were lined up 3-4 hours before the game, so that they could be some of the first people in the gates to get the.
Yeah, it's crazy. They had, they had people they were like, traffic is snarled outside the ballpark because everybody was trying to get in line to get a game. To get a bobblehead.
And a game.
And to watch a game.
So
Dodgers win this game 7-3. Jason Hayward is back in the lineup, hits a home run for the first time since coming off of the IL. And James Paxton, really underrated, flies under the radar. I think that's where he needs to be. 6 innings, gives up 7 hits. But this is the biggest thing. No walks.
Right.
That's huge.
That's really huge.
And I think we finally saw where Grove needs to be. Grove does not need to be in high leverage situations. He needs to come in for an inning, 1, 2, 3, he's done. That's it. No more, no less.
He just needs to be the ferry to the next guy.
Because Blake Trinan has been lights out. I mean, he has looked so good since he's been back.
Yeah, it's nice to see him come back strong.
Yeah, because that was
always
a concern. Yeah, I was concerned about him because he's been out for so long. This next game, this is the one we all needed because I think some people might have been getting down on Walker. I think they were thinking,
shouldn't they have been?
Yes, but 3rd time's a charm.
But maybe not, because he'd only had 2 games prior, and he's coming off of his second serious injury.
Yes.
And serious. You got to give people, every single person I've ever heard talk about having Tommy John, whether it's the first time, the second time. Yeah, you're out for a year, but sometimes you're almost out for a year and a half or 2,
right?
Because of the time it takes to get back.
Yeah, no, I don't think that he deserved that, but we all know how Dodger fans are. And but we got Walker back because Walker made his third start. He looks better. He 6 innings, 3 hits, 7 strikeouts. So he got jumbo jacks on his own.
Nice.
And no walks. Mookie Betts was out of the lineup, taking a day off, which I'm sure was needed and well deserved. And Dodgers win this game 4-0. And then go ahead.
Walker did say it's not about how he's, the mechanics or pitch placement or things like that. It's about getting back into the competitive mindset at that level. And he said, I'm still getting my way back there. Yeah. And it looks like he took a giant leap here. We'll see obviously what happens going forward, but that's a good step to let everybody know, hey, I'm still in here. I'm just still getting reconnected.
Yeah, definitely. And it's going to take him a while to get reconnected. I mean, like you said, was it 2 years? Almost right. 2 years. And I think, you get out of the routineness of being a ball player. And then, because I'm sure they all go through a routine, but then to have, the intensity that you need, and especially him, he's always been very intense. So you have to get that back.
Right.
But he looked really good. And I think that was and I'm sure for him, it was a good confidence boost that he needed.
For sure. So the finale of that series would be a Zennings game.
Zennings, and I believe another bobblehead. I think it was Will Smith this time. And
which is odd on a Sunday game.
Yeah.
To have a bobblehead, but yeah, they did a bunch of them in a row. And talking about your buddy Tyler Glass now, his is coming up on the 1st of June.
Cool. That'd be a cool one to have. I like any of the Dodger bobbleheads, but this one goes into Zennings, and a guy who has only had one walk-off since he's been in the MLB, and that was a walk-off single, does it again. Shohei Ohtani, for the second time in his career, hits a walk-off single, and has a home run in this game.
2-run homer.
Yeah, the Dodgers win 3-2 in Zennings.
Yeah, Shohei drives in the ghost runner.
Yes.
Jason Hayward, and the the team goes nuts. Got Shohei, they're throwing water at him and everything. Had a bucket that got more on the camera than got on to that was out there filming it than it got on to Shohei. Shohei seems like he's in a much better, like a weight lifted off of his shoulders. He seems like he's having a lot more fun. He seems more happy and smiling. I mean, obviously he would been that way with the Angels, but it just seems like he doesn't seem like he's separate. Like,
yeah, he was separate from the Angels. I mean, you can see it in the dugout. He and Yamamoto are good friends and they joke around, but Ohtani is a jokester.
Yes,
and
he is.
So you see that a lot more since he's been with the Dodgers. So yeah, Zennings in that game, but I wanted to mention Anthony Banda got 3 straights out in the 10th.
Right.
And that was his debut with the Dodgers. He was acquired from Cleveland on Friday, and it was his first win since May 28th, 2022.
Wow. Yeah, they've picked up 3 pitchers that they just traded for cash or a player to be named later recently, and we'll probably mention the other two as they play. We'll see where they finally get to come in and do that. So 2 great series coming off of the series loss. Not a bad series with the Padregs, just a series loss. And of course the Padregs, doesn't matter, they win and then they head off to lose to everybody else. So
Right.
they're of no consequence. So 2 straight series wins. The Dodgers will play Arizona at home to finish up that homestand. And then they're off to Cincinnati.
Yeah,
This is like a Cincinnati podcast today.
it is.
We had Pete Rose,
Yes.
Keith O'Brien's from Cincinnati.
Yeah, born and raised. Yeah.
So two Cincinnatians. We talked 2-1 and about one. Talked about the Reds in this, and that they're going to be playing the Reds coming up in Cincinnati, just for 3 though.
Just for 3.
They've already taken care of the 4. Player of the week.
Player of the week that I looked, because I always try to go beyond, and this time I just couldn't. I just went with Shohei.
That was an easy one. And honestly, I looked at that too. Let's just add on to Shohei Day. He's been hitting a lot, drives in, has that walk off. What an incredible day. Any stats you wanted to throw along with Shohei, or just Shohei?
Had just Shohei, but 5 RBIs. He had 2 home runs. But he was just, other than his off day where he was 0 for 2 on his, Shohei day.
Well,
but he made up for it.
He batted leadoff on when Mookie was off and went 0 for 4.
Yeah.
But other than that, he's tough to get around. And that's the one thing. The top 3, what was it, in one of the games I saw, the top 3 each had 2 hits. And then the rest of them had an issue. But yeah, good choice. That's not my choice, but a good choice nonetheless. I went with Blake Trinan.
Awesome.
He only threw 3 innings over the 2 series, but they were high leverage innings. He only gave up 3 hits, 0 ERA on that. So he kept the Dodgers in it, and didn't give up a lot of things to cause them any kind of problems.
Yeah, I'm glad that he's back within. He's always pitched with another guy, pitches with intensity. He just has that stare that he can do, and they need it in the bullpen. They need somebody, because you've got Evan Phillips currently out with the hamstring. And I want to know what's going on with Brusdar Graterol. Have not heard a lot. He had started a throwing program, and then they took him up, and we're not going to see Emmett Sheehan anytime soon because he had been on the IL. Didn't really know exactly what was going on with him, but we did find out that he had a partial tear in the UCL and had an internal brace surgery done. So he is out for the foreseeable future, at least a year, 12 months, 18 months. So we'll see. But Dustin May has started his throwing program. They got to put that out there, because the Dodgers have like 11 pitchers on the IL.
Right. They have 11 pitchers. You got guys who, without these injuries, who knows what maybe they don't end up signing Yamamoto or Tyler Glass now. If Dustin May, if Gonsolin, if these guys hadn't fallen apart like they did, Walker Buehler as well, Clayton Kershaw. If any of these guys hadn't had issues like they've had, who knows what the pitching staff. I think it's better that we're here, because some of these guys I don't think are. I don't know if Gonsolin's going to come back. I'm not really sure about Dustin May either. Yeah, because it seems like he gets out, pitches well, and then he's like a limited innings pitcher. Yeah. And then something happened. So I want to see.
Well, the sad thing with him was he had surgery. He was out. He comes back, looked really good last season, pitched a handful of times, and then has to have another surgery. I mean, that's just heartbreaking. But Bobby Miller also on the IL, but looks like he'll be starting some rehab starts. So, we'll see. But I think that's a good thing to bring up about Yamamoto is would they have signed him if they didn't have 11 pitchers on the IL?
Right. I mean, that's really, looking at what potentially could happen going into this year. He showed up and was available at the right time. So he pitched in 9 different games last season. Dustin May did.
Yeah, I was gonna say it wasn't a lot, and then it came crashing down. So we'll see. I mean, I think where we're at is, seems to be good and getting better. But yeah, we'll talk about Arizona, and then, like you said, back to Cincinnati, and then they're also going to be playing the Mets in New York. So.
Lots to talk about with the Angels this week. 3 series that we need to go over. We're just going to hit the big parts, but there were things that happened in each series that we can pinpoint on. Overall, not a bad week for the Angels. They finish up that Missouri team series or homestand. Kansas City came through, then St. Louis stopped in for 3. And really, if it hadn't been for one situation, the only thing that we could talk about in this series without an overshadowing would be Kevin Pillar. Somebody tweeted, Kevin Pillar is the greatest Angel ever.
Yes.
And it makes me mad that we didn't pick him up last year.
Yeah, he's been around.
He was available last year. He ended up signing somewhere else, but it was somebody that we could have picked up, and here's the thing. They didn't, I'm glad, actually, I guess in the big picture, I'm glad they didn't, because they would have done the same thing that they did with Urshela. Not sign him again.
Yeah.
Give him the 1 year. Urshela, the only reason he didn't have a great year all year was because he got injured, broke that pelvis. They should have re-signed him and Pillar. And then with Drury and the kids, obviously we knew that Trout and Rendon were going to get hurt at some point. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Just the way. It's the Angel way.
It would have just been Pillar. The Angels do lose this series 2-1. They do have an interesting night where they may have been able to win, but major issue. A questionable call on how it was handled in the aftermath by Ron Washington. So the deal is the Angels are pushing to come back. On the mound is Jojo Romero. And if ever you saw a guy who looked lost or deer in headlights, that was him. All I could see was, don't do anything to mess him up, because he's already messing himself up. What do they say? If your opponents are having issues, don't interrupt them. Let them keep messing up. So Jojo Romero comes out there. He's having a hard time finding the strike zone. He gets a pitch clock
violation,
Pendleton violation. Yeah, why couldn't I think violation? He gets a pitch clock. So somebody's on base. He had walked a couple of hitters, and so these guys are. He's just, like I said, he's just having a really hard time. Bases are loaded, and Zach Neto's on third base. One of the newer Angels, Luis Guillorme, who we talked about last week, being there, gets called up, and Ron Washington, unbeknownst to us watching, calls for him for a suicide squeeze. Okay, now, if you're not familiar with squeeze plays, and many aren't because we don't see them very often, there's 2 varieties. There is the suicide squeeze, which is, and these can only happen. These two varieties can only happen when there's a runner on third. Really. Suicide squeeze is the runner's coming no matter what. He's like stealing home almost. No matter what, he's on his way. The safety squeeze is a runner stops to see what happens before he goes. This was a suicide squeeze. And then you have just normal bunts, sacrifice bunts, stuff like that. But it was the runner on third, and the bases are loaded. So Neto has to go at some point, but he doesn't have to go right away. But the call was suicide squeeze. Jojo Romero's pitch. Guillermo is a left-handed hitter. The pitch was in the right-handed hitter's box. I mean, it was that far off the plate.
Yeah.
Guillermo basically is almost diving across. He is as far across as he can and can't get to the ball. Neto's all the way. He's 3/4 of the way down the line. And the catcher is able to catch it, gets up, tags him out, and that's it. They immediately go to Ron Washington, who is shaking his head. He's disgusted by the whole thing.
Yeah.
All right. I get that maybe Neto should have maybe hesitated a step, but that's not how a suicide squeeze goes. And Neto probably has got it in him by now with all the mistakes that I've seen him made. And I haven't seen all the games all the way through. And I've heard and read of other times. He's like, I am going to execute this. Guillermo couldn't bunt that. Even if he'd have just tossed the bat at it, it probably wouldn't have hit the ball.
Yeah, no, it wasn't going to happen.
And so he's upset about it. The Angels end up losing that particular game 7-6. They do come back in the next game to win it, to get the one game that they went out of the series. Once again, Kevin Pillar leading the way on that. But here's where my issue is that when they talked to Ron Washington after the game, he basically threw his hands up. He did like the dealers in Vegas. He just clapped and cleared. I have nothing. I'm no longer dealing with these cards.
Yeah. They asked him about it, and he said, why'd you make this decision to go with the squeeze? And he said, lefty on lefty, sinker baller on a left-hander. I didn't want him to hit into a double play. He can handle the bat. He didn't do the job. It wasn't anything I did wrong. He didn't do the job.
So
Not my
essentially,
fault.
the end of that was that's it. And that's what everybody took from it. Why are you blaming me?
Yeah.
Put the blame where it's supposed to go. And I think he even said something about when one of the reporters said something about, but where was it? Ron Washington said he was throwing strikes. This guy couldn't find the strike zone.
Exactly.
If he'd have walked it to the plate.
Right. Well,
fine.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned he had Jojo Romero. He had trouble with his control. Only 13 of his 28 pitches in the inning prior to this bunt attempt, were strikes. He had walked the previous two batters to load the bases. And Ron Washington says, wild. He was throwing it in the strike zone. Why are you making excuses? He was throwing the ball in the strike zone. He didn't get the bunt down, period.
He didn't.
But I'm
do
like,
the job.
what? He didn't do the job. But who are you watching on the mound?
What game are you on?
What? Yeah, exactly. Because, yeah, I
saw all that happen. I was watching that part of the game, and I was like, finally, Zach Neto does something right. Ron Washington, I understood that he was disgusted by the play because the pitch was out there, and maybe if Zach hadn't been coming down the line, I don't think Guillorme even makes an attempt at that ball. but because he knew what the play was,
Right.
he did everything he could to make it right.
Well,
For one time, it was not a player's fault.
it
They
wasn't
made the effort.
right. And this is, I mean, Jeremy, like you mentioned, he had joined the team via the trade with the Braves. He was told about Washington's comments, and he said he hadn't heard them, and it was a tough pitch to connect on. But he goes on and he says he made a good pitch.
Yeah, I didn't get it down. I've got to try to put a bat on it. That's it. He took the blame.
Yeah. But
even though he shouldn't have had to.
No.
And Ron Washington, instead of throwing Luis Me under the bus, should have said he made a great effort to do that, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah. I don't know that that's not just the right way as for a manager to throw your players under the bus like that. I don't think, I mean, because as a manager, you're not always right. I mean, maybe Ron Washington thinks he's always right. I don't know. But
I wondered if it's because he's feeling really frustrated by how things have been going.
I can understand that. I just think that it's not a good look for a manager. And he doesn't have to blame the player. And he doesn't, take the blame like, hey, he can say, this is why I called that play and it didn't work out. And that's it. And it doesn't have to be this,
right,
blame game.
Exactly. And that's what I think should have happened as well. But whatever happened, they're there. Hopefully he and Guillorme have got it together, and there's not any other issues. It didn't help either that in that game, Reed Detmers once again had a bad outing. Soriano in the game before in this series, another great outing that gets botched by the bullpen. They must have something against Soriano.
I don't know, but Matt Moore he looked good last season, and this season he is bad.
I want to send him back to his high school team if they'd have him.
I don't know that they would.
Like, I don't know if we want you, dude. Anyway, if it wasn't for Kevin Pillar in some of these games, they wouldn't have even been in. There were some good plays across the board, but those were the standouts. The Angels, after St. Louis, they head to Texas to take on the Rangers. Kind of a homecoming of sorts for Ron Washington. He took them to the World Series 2 different times, had a great managing career. And it's weird that after managing there, it took him so long to get back as a manager with the success he had. I think some of it was the battle he's had with his personal demons. But, I would have thought he had been there. And while the Angels are there, they end up taking this series. And honestly, they have a lot to thank they have to give thanks to 2 former Angels. Because they won the 2 outer games, so they won the hard cookies, and then the marshmallowy middle they lost. But they took out Andrew Haney, former Angel, and Michael Lorenzen.
Yeah,
and his Vans.
And you mentioned that middle game, no Kevin Pillar.
No. And that's probably it. They lost 3-2 in that game.
In innings, 13 innings.
Right. In innings. And they just couldn't put it together. Aside from a couple of home runs. In fact, the 2 runs they got were both off of the long ball, Adele and Ward. The first game, though, is probably the highlight overall as far as the outings go for position players. Willie Calhoun also coming back to Texas is
he made his debut with the Texas Rangers.
He started off as a Dodger.
Yeah.
Got traded for Yu Darvish. Made it to the bigs. on that first night out, the Angels win 9-3. He goes 4 for 5 in the game, and really shows them. The other player to have a big outing, to have a big game, Tyler Anderson.
Yeah, he pitched 7 innings, which I think is a big deal. I mean, I think it's kind of sad that we are like, ooh, 7 innings, but it is what it is.
He's like one of the few who have gone multiple 7-inning games
That's true.
Season.
Yeah.
2 hits, only 1 run. So it was a great game there. And they take the win there. They also grabbed that last win, 4-1. And Calhoun has a base knock in that one. Also in the middle, Patrick Sandoval didn't pitch that bad. 6 innings, only gave up 1 run on 3 hits, struck out 5. And they just, like I said, couldn't get past the Rangers, and of course no Pilar. And then finally, Jose Soriano, because you know why? He didn't go out after 6 innings. He went out after 7 2/3 when he was allowed the bases to get loaded. And he was able to, the bullpen actually helped him out that time. And he's able to get that win. And he has had so many good outings where he's not allowed a run or maybe 1 run and gone, 6, 5, 6, actually more than 5 innings each time. But 7 2/3 here, and wraps up that series. And I'm sure it was a big confidence boost for the team. I'm sure Wash had to be happy that he beat the old team. And they head down south to play Houston. They're going to have to take on Framber Valdez, who's generally had their number when they're in Houston. And Houston has been battling to be above 500. In fact, I think I got to look real quick, but I think they're if they're not tied now with the same record, they're pretty close. No, Houston's got 2 more wins, but the Angels were able to with the win in the finale and winning 2 of the 3. We're able to kind of close the gap there a little bit on them. So it looked good for them. They won a game they shouldn't have won. In the first one, they come back from behind to win 9-7. And it was a historic day for the long ball, not only in Angels history, but in Major League history.
Yeah, it's the first time in National League, American League history, a club had homers from a 25-year-old, a 24-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 22-year-old in the same game.
Sean Ewell's 22. Neto is 23. O'Hoppe was the 24-year-old. And then the old man, Joe Adele, was at 25.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool.
And really what is great about all of that, and then, of course, a 2 for 5 day from Kevin Pillar, is that it overcame another rough outing from Reed Detmers. He goes 4 innings, gives up 6 runs on 8 hits. 2 of those were, multi-run home runs, including a 3-run shot by Tiny in that game. And then the Honduran Mauricio Dubon hit a 2-run homer. And they overcame Framber Valdez in that game, who went 5 innings, gave up 10 hits and 8 runs to him, and 3 of those 4 home runs. And the first 5 in the order all had multiple hit games. Second game out of the 3-game series, they go to Jennings. Kyle Tucker is the big guy to drive the train towards a win. Yordan Alvarez also there, but it's Jeremy Pena with a walk-off off of Carlos Estevez that ends up dropping the Angels, causing the Angels to drop that game. Griffin Canning, another good outing for him overall. Like you said, I mean, getting excited about 7 innings. with him and a couple other pitchers were happen to be excited with 5 innings at this point and
Right.
hoping he gets more. But while he did give up 2 home runs, he only gave up 2 hits, which were the 2 home runs. He did walk 3, which hurt him. And in that game, Christian Javier, they were able to get to him too, with about 8 hits and 4 runs over the innings pitched. And then finally, the finale of the series, an early getaway day type game, so that the Angels can head home and get ready for a homestand. Tyler Anderson, instead of celebrating 7 2/3, let's celebrate 8. How about that?
8. 8 innings. That's awesome.
It was a light hitting day for the Angels. And we'll talk about the guy that drove everything from them. The Angels were out hit in this game. They win it 2-1. The Asterisks were able to put down 6 hits. Angels only 3. The Angels could have won this 3-1, except that the guy who hit the game-winning hit, his first major league home run in Kyron Paris, hits a 2-run shot, also was called out at the plate. And you go back and you look at it, it was a double play ball. Balls hit to Tiny. Tiny, though, here's the thing. You can't underestimate a guy like Tiny. As much as I can't stand Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve is an all-star. Jose Altuve is potentially a Hall of Famer based on his numbers and his, just his career. Jose gets the ball. Kyron, instead of breaking right away or hesitating a bit to see that they have committed to the double play, heads home, but kind of just figures, I'll just jog in. Altuve sees that out of his third eye and makes a perfect throw home. Paris is out. And of course they do challenge it. That was the catcher blocking the plate. No, he wasn't. And he was just barely out. It was like a hair as to whether he was, safe or out, but you could tell he was out. And had he gone full speed ahead, or had he hesitated back to confirm that Jose had turned a pivot to toss to Pena at second base to start the double play, then he could have gone, he blew that. It's a rookie mistake. And those are the things that I know make Ron Washington shake his head and have that. Those are the plays where he should have a disgusted look on his face, not when his player made a really good effort to try to keep the squeeze play, a suicide squeeze, alive. And I think he gets tired of it. And I think maybe he because all this talk, there has been talks on the side, not as loud as it was a couple weeks ago, but did we get the right guy? Is something wrong with Ron Washington? Is he only a coach? Well, too many things to think about here is that this is a team of young guys. This is a team that going into the season, it didn't matter who was the manager, was not going to be making the playoffs in anybody's mind. With that said, last year, the Asterisks were close to the same kind of record that they have now. They played under 500 the whole first half, and then they picked it up and made it they won the West.
Right.
The Angels are only 2 games behind them. They're only 7 games behind Seattle with 100 and something to play. They're not, technically they're not out.
Oh, no. Yeah, they could still get it.
Something can happen. They could turn it on and win the second half and make the playoffs.
Yeah. I think there's interesting things the Angels are doing. And one thing I thought was interesting is that they had the Angels starters they stood in against their own pitches that were simulated by Track It. I don't know. It's TR.
Yeah, it's a pitching machine.
Yeah, pitching machine
that is able to emulate any type of pitch or any pitcher.
Yeah, so the pitchers were standing in, and the reason they had them do it was so they would trust their stuff and throw it more in the zone. And I thought that was really I think it's interesting, but I think it's, it's like that's like a good idea to trust what you're throwing.
Right. I think that if I'm the Angels, even though I'm sure he wouldn't do it because he's a Dodger throwing through, I'd go talk to Sandy Koufax. Because Sandy said the minute that I started trying to make the hitters hit the ball instead of making them miss it, I became a better pitcher.
Yeah.
And, a lot of batters are going to watch that pitch down the middle sometimes. Not every time.
Right.
But it's about how to throw the pitch and not always trying to be off on the sides, the corners and all that. You're not Greg Maddux. Okay. Greg Maddux could paint the corners. There are very few pitchers, and these guys they're not as finesse like that. If they can get to that point, that's great. But all they need to do is get to a point where they can consistently throw the pitches where they want them, throw them in so that they're in the zone to make the batter think that they've got a chance to hit something, and believe that next pitch is going to come in on that inner half of the third like it has been, or in a certain spot. And in that time, throw that, that curve or slider that just drops out on them. And then they end up swinging at a pitch in the dirt. And you got it. But yeah, that was an awesome move. I felt like too. We'll see how it works out, and hopefully they get it, but see where it's at, trust where you're throwing it. And I don't know what they're doing when they're off looking at, looking at tapes. Here's how you threw this and that. But they need to do something so that they become more confident in that. And especially Reed Detmers seems to have lost that confidence. Angels come back home. They've got the Guardians and then the Yankees coming in, both coming in for 3 before they head out to Seattle. And, it's interesting is it had been, like 45 games in before they even played an AL West opponent. Usually they open the season against Oakland or Texas or somebody. This season they played everybody and then finally get them. And now they'll start playing a little bit more, like I said, with Seattle being the next AL West team that they face after the Yankees and the Guardians. Player of the week, anybody stand out for you this time?
Kevin Pillar. I mean, I can't not get, he's just awesome. And when he's not in the game, they lose. So I don't know.
Yeah. Where else are you going to go? Well, there is someplace else you could go.
True.
And I thought about it last week, but I went ahead and went with Kevin Pillar too, because it was just, but I think this guy actually had a better week last week, so I'm going to make it up to him this week. He had a okay week this week, including a 4-for-5 game when he went back to his old team. It's Willie Calhoun for me is my player of the week. He did hit .311, 10 hits on the week, just a couple of RBIs. Last week he had a home run. He had a couple other things, and this week he had a couple of games where he was a little off. But he has been more consistent than many of the other players have, and he's showing that he's definitely. Maybe somebody should have given him a chance. Maybe the Angels should have picked him up a lot sooner, traded for him or something. Who knows? But it seems like he's making the best of this opportunity, and I'm happy to see it. Nice to see that the bullpen cart is back. That little dent that was in there, all fixed up. We're looking really good. New paint job. Ready to take it on a spin around baseball. And as usual, we like to open things up with the MLBs. They copy us every week and have a player of the week. So we figure, these guys need a little recognition as well. So who did the MLB pick?
The MLB picked 2 outfielders, one from the New York Yankees, Mr. Aaron Judge, who hit .500 over the week with 3 home runs, 5 doubles, 7 runs, scored 7 runs, and had a 1.830 OPS. Then you head across the country to the area where Aaron Judge is from, San Francisco, and Luis Matos, who is an outfielder, is the National League Player of the Week. He hit .385, 2 home runs, 3 doubles, and 16 RBIs.
All while playing at home versus an angry crowd of Dodger fans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they call, San Diego Dodger Stadium South. Now you got San Fran Dodger Stadium North. Can't
yeah,
get
really.
away.
And that's the weirdest thing. And we talked a little bit about that last week about things that we were hearing. So cool. Congrats to those guys. Last week we talked about a pitcher making his debut, and it was people were like kind of going overboard talking about how great this effort was and what a debut. And I'm thinking, no, there's been better debuts. Great. It was a good start. But I think his next time out, this is the one that you can actually get excited about. Last week, the guy we're talking about, Paul Skenes, last week made his debut at home versus the Cubs. And he went 4 innings, didn't have an awesome outing. He goes to Chicago to play the Cubs again, his second game. This one looked like he may no-hit him.
Yeah, 6 no-hit innings in this game. Struck out 11, only walked 1. I mean, so much better. Something you can really be excited about, especially if you're a Pirates fan.
Able to bring that ERA down from like almost 7 to just under 3 with that outing. Threw 100 pitches in the game. Yeah, he is. That's something to get excited about for sure.
Well, and one of the things that I think is interesting about Paul Skenes is he did in college. He started at the Air Force Academy. You have to have an appointment to go to the Air Force Academy. But he wanted to go pro. And that's not how it works when you go to one of the academies. So he transferred to LSU. But I think it's interesting. He's 21, and he says that he would still like to serve in the military after his career is over.
Huh.
So I don't know how that would work, but one of the cool things he does is Gary Sinise has a foundation called the Lieutenant Dan Foundation, after the character in Forrest Gump. Right. And Paul Skenes, for every strike that he throws, he donates $100 to the Lieutenant Dan Foundation. And he has 18 strikeouts in 10 innings so far.
Nice.
So pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So very cool that he was able to do that, and all the excitement about it. This time, definitely warranted. I don't know if we really should do this. The City Connects are things that we know are coming. Some of them have been okay. Somebody said only the Angels, and I can't remember who else, had, good City Connects. And, The Angel City Connects just kind of are like them. You know, if you're not paying attention to them, you just don't notice. They're not really out there big. I think we're going to notice these. The best thing that I can say about them is that the Cardinals have never worn a red jersey before, other than for batting practice and in spring training. But during the season, they're pretty much strictly white and gray.
That's it. Yes. Their uniforms have largely remained unchanged through their 142 history. And I don't know, what do we say about these City Connects?
If you went with the over that the arch would be included somewhere, you're a winner.
Yes, I'm a winner. I won.
You're a winner. Winner.
What can we say? All right. Well, I don't know what to say.
I guess that's all. That's all you could say.
I don't. Okay. Birds on the Bat debuted in 1922. Right. So they opted to stay traditional with their City Connects, and in fact, St. Louis wasn't even sure that they were going to participate in the City Connects, but they decided to do it.
They made the wrong decision.
They did. I think they got the birds on the bat on the front of the jersey, and then it says the Lou, and that is paying homage to St. Louis because Nelly had an album out, and in one of his songs, he rapped, "I'm from the Lou, and, you know, I'm proud of being from the Lou." The best, it makes me laugh, I can't even get it out, is in England or in the United Kingdom, when you go to the bathroom, I'm going to the bathroom, going to the restroom, whatever they say, "I'm going to the loo." And that's all I could think of when I see these, when I look at these jerseys. It's because I don't know, do people from St. Louis call, "Oh, I'm from the loo"? I don't know I've ever heard that before. And a lot of times people will say, like, a big joke for us is there's like certain like cowboy hats that are kind of go up on the side, and they're not quite, their hat, and they're kind of a cowboy hat, but they're like, "Oh, that's what the locals wear," like here in New Mexico. And it's like nobody wears those hats unless you are a tourist. You are visiting but you think that's what everybody wears. And that's what I wonder. If you're from St. Louis, did you ever think, "Oh yeah, I'm from the Lou"? I don't know. All right. The white pinstripes across the sleeve of the jersey represents St. Louis's location between the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers. It's the first time since 1929 pinstripes appeared on a uniform. 1882 is written on the inside of the collar to represent the birth year of the franchise. And as you mentioned, there is a sleeve patch with the Gateway Arch and the Fleur de Lis, which is an homage to the French heritage.
To St. Louis?
Yes, to St. Louis.
Saint Louis?
St. Louis.
Wouldn't it be San Louis?
I guess so, yeah. I guess. Right. They're going to debut these uniforms on Saturday versus the Chicago Cubs, and they will be worn 11 additional times throughout the season. I am sure that those Cardinal fans, are super excited to see these uniforms because they are really a miss.
And they're not playing great this season overall. So
and then they do this.
And then doesn't one of the players, didn't they kind of come out with a ringing endorsement?
A ringing endorsement from Mason Wynn, the shortstop.
Honest opinion.
My computer science degree.
Their city connects. Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, that was a ringing endorsement for Mason Lynn.
I know, he didn't know how to answer. He was like, well.
Yeah.
So they're going to debut. And then our next team to debut, the Toronto Blue Jays.
Oh.
And over under Maple Leaf.
Oh, over for sure. You
A
know,
Moose, over under Moose.
ooh, that one, that would be an interesting bet, more than the Maple Leaf.
Right.
Will they have a Moose? I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know that Moose are, if they were like the Saskatchewan Blue Jays, maybe Toronto as a city. I'm not,
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know that they're, but I don't know. That's the
And
first
that's
thing.
another question. Being the only team in Canada, would they take that route to be representative of the country?
Right, because
versus just the city.
that's good, because would they just be Toronto, or would they try to incorporate the provinces? So Quebec, is there going to be something kind of
in French? They could put a fleur-de-lis there.
Yes. Will the name be in French? I don't know. Blue Jays in French. I don't know what that is.
Maybe you should look that up and post it.
Oh, you know what would be awesome? Because in Canada, they have to have English and French signs. If they had Blue Jays and then underneath in French.
Blau, because that's blue, right? Blau J.
I don't know. It's going to be fun.
Avion de Blau. I don't know. I mean, but that could be. Will they do that, or will they be specific to the great city? You know what? Here's another one. YYZ, the airport code there, made famous by a Rush song. Will that somehow be incorporated into that?
Yeah. How could they incorporate Great White North?
Maybe on like they do, put in the collar.
Yes.
Coo 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 coo. Or back bacon, or donuts.
Yeah.
And beer, So many options.
So many.
It'll be great. And you know what I heard about them is that they are kind of opening the doors up to maybe listening to trade opportunities for Vladdy Jr. and Bo Bichette.
Yeah, and I've heard that, but this is interesting. So I when I'm not podcasting, I'm a school counselor, and I have a student who is a big Blue Jays fan. And he told me before the season even started, he said, "Do you know that I think they're going to get rid of Vladdy. I think they might get rid of Bo." So he had his finger on the pulse. I mean, Vladdy was getting booed when the Dodgers played them up in Toronto. So, yeah. And they're not doing so well.
No. And there's a lot of questions with that. And right now I hear the asking price is really high. But if they're looking to maybe do a little bit of a rebuild, those are the guys that you want to try to get rid of at maximum opportunity. Maybe they can go to someplace like the Yankees and wear an iconic uniform.
Yes.
Just like the Babe did.
Yes. This uniform sold last time this uniforms or jersey sold was in 2005, and it sold for $940,000. And the reason that it only sold for $940,000 is because they were not able to authenticate it. Well, now they have authenticated this jersey, and this jersey was worn. It's the road gray jersey. It was worn by Babe Ruth when he called his shot in Game 3 of the 1932 World Series. And this one is going up for auction, and it could fetch $30 million.
Oh, wow. Could you imagine having 30 million of just discretionary funds? I want this jersey. I will have this jersey. Yeah. It's like, how do you do that? $30 million? If I had $30 million, I'm certainly, at this point, I'm certainly not buying that jersey. I mean, as cool as it would be, but yeah, I can't even at $30,000, I'm not buying that jersey.
No, but it's really interesting about this jersey. Like I said, they knew it was worn by Babe Ruth, but then they started looking at old photos, and when he called his shot in this game and during the World Series, then they were able to authenticate it because they looked at the buttons, they looked at the script on the front of the jersey. I mean, it was a lot of they were honing in on these different things, and I guess even looking at the stitching, knowing that, yes, this is the jersey.
I guess that's a good way to do that. I mean, I don't know. Because how many times have we read stories about, documents or certain things that were supposedly authenticated, and they still turned out to be a forgery.
Yeah.
Later on. I mean, obviously the stitching of the time frame, if they've got others that they can see, there's certain things that have to be, and it's not that long ago that you can't have a better shot. It's not like trying to authenticate some kind of a document from, Plato. This is a little easier to do, but still $30 million. Let me tell you this. I could tell you without a doubt, if I went and spent 30 million on Babe Ruth's jersey, Blanca would make sure that I ended up on the wheel of IL.
Are you all right? Don't end up on it now. All right. Austin Riley of the Braves is still listed day to day with intercostal strain.
I thought you said he was sedated. Day to day.
I want to be sedated. No. Just
24 hours and more. I want to be sedated.
Yeah. Not good news for the Red Sox. Garrett Whitlock has damage in his right UCL and will likely need surgery.
Of course.
Carlos Carrasco is on the 15-day IL with acute neck spasms.
So it's pleasant to look at. It's cute.
Yeah, not ugly. It's cute. No, acute. And I mentioned Emmett Sheehan during the Dodgers segment. He did have surgery. And, that's one of the things, like with the Dodgers. Like, we knew he was on the IL, but they never say anything. And they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, he had surgery. Oh, okay. Xander Bogaerts is listed as day-to-day with shoulder pain. And Jung-Hoo Lee of San Francisco, their big signing, was transferred to the 60-day IL because he had surgery to repair his shoulder and is out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, the rest of the year. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And Jorge Polanco is listed as day-to-day with a hamstring injury, and Adolis Garcia is listed day-to-day with forearm strain, and that's it for the Wheel of IL. So we'll see if those guys that are day-to-day, because there's several of them that are day-to-day.
I had a song for one guy.
Oh.
And I didn't hear him.
Oh, wait, you know what? Because I kind of put it out of my, yeah. I'll give it to you. Max Muncy is on the IL with an oblique injury.
Emily, you were trying to deny me, weren't you?
I
And
was.
you know what?
I'm going to sneak it past you.
I had a different song altogether, but now I have 24 hours or more. I want to be sedated. Oh, my oblique is oh so sore. Max wants to be sedated. Get me to the hospital. Give me some drugs. Sedate me down so my oblique's not so sore. Yeah, I kind of fell apart at the end.
Hurry.
Hurry. I got to get some more. Oh, oblique.
Oh, yeah. I tried to sneak that one past you and just not do it. So
I got you. Hey, great deal before we move on into NCAA. I just saw this. I haven't verified it, but Smash Mouth Baseball posted on Facebook a tweet by Justin Verlander. And I kind of like this. If you think baseball is boring, you need to learn more. There is always something happening every second of every play. Learn the game and watch again. And that's how we feel about it, too.
yes.
Thanks, Justin. All right. We know that we're coming up on next Monday. Memorial Day is the selection show for the NCAA baseball tournament as we get teams out on the road to Omaha. This year, instead of being on the road to Omaha, we're taking the road to Arlington. So we can go be at the All-Star game, but maybe next year, Omaha will be our location. How does it look out there? Who's in the top 10? I know there was a little bit of movement out of the top 10. What do we have? What are we looking at now?
So pretty much the same. Got those SEC teams: Tennessee, Kentucky, still 1 and 2, Clemson 3, Texas A&M at 4, Arkansas, Oregon State, North Carolina, Oklahoma at 8, East Carolina at 9, and Florida State at 10. Big drop this week was Wake Forest, who last week was number 8, is now number 22.
Wow. It's pretty tight. They're in the rankings, and as we're getting closer and closer, these last minute losses, definitely, I don't think Tennessee's going to be affected by too much by a last minute loss unless it's to Kentucky. But some of these teams could see their spots drop and maybe their seedings drop, maybe even lose out on a chance at being the regional host. Usually first round, first top 16 are the regional hosts most of the time.
And I think Tennessee, they had a rough, their College World Series ended with a really rough game where a crucial play the ball got lost in the lights. And it was just, so I'm thinking that the Volunteers are hoping to remedy that and get a do-over in Omaha. Yeah,
they're definitely out for revenge, to avenge, to get that, avenge that last loss. I know I've talked to some folks who are up in the Lexington area, and they are all very excited about what's happening in a couple of ways. Number one, they got a new head basketball coach there. Calipari is out, and how great the Kentucky Wildcats baseball team is doing has gotten a lot of people interested. So we'll see where it will all fall. And looking forward to another great tournament coming up this June in Division I baseball. Now let's shift gears a little bit as we wrap things up on this show. We appreciate you hanging in there. We had some great things, starting back with Keith O'Brien and talking about Pete Rose, through the Dodgers, through the Angels, around baseball. This has got to be, I mean, I think the term here that fits really well, bittersweet for this school. Birmingham Southern College, right? That's the name of them. And it looks like their college, not just the sports program, but the whole college.
Yes.
This is it. When this last class is done, they're closing.
Yeah. As of May 31st, after 158 years, Birmingham Southern College will be no more. But their baseball team will still be playing because they just advanced to the Super Regionals, Division III. And if they move on to the Division III World Series, they'll be playing for a school that doesn't even exist.
Right. Potentially, they could be winning a title. I mean, how's that for going out, though, as a college? We're done. I guess, it was a unanimous decision by the board of the school. Financial struggles just got the best of them, and they're just not able to get more funding to keep things going beyond, just your normal tuition and stuff. To go out as and not have a chance to even defend your title.
Yeah,
talk about a one-off.
Yeah. So we are going to keep a close eye on the Panthers of Birmingham Southern as they make their way into the Super Regionals, and they are going to be playing. Let's see. Sorry, let me do that.
They're playing Denison.
Yes, and in Ohio, and I think that's on tomorrow.
Right. So they've got that. They're going up there. Denison is the number 2 team nationally in Division III. So they got their work cut out for them, but we will definitely be rooting for the Birmingham Southern College team. What's their mascot? Did you say?
I said that Panthers is what I saw.
Okay. So so we'll be rooting on the Panthers. If I'd known earlier, I would have I'd have got me some Panther gear.
I bet maybe you could still do that. Yeah.
I'll have to go hit the Fanatics link on siblingrivalrybb.com and see if I can get that. Yep. It is a cat. That's for sure. What kind of cat? It is the Panthers.
Yes.
And the reason being, it's a little interesting. The mascot, 1924, Birmingham Southern purchased an authentic stuffed panther from a scientific organization. And, that is where it became. And they said that the football team was like a pack of panthers. And that'll put a wrap on this edition of the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast. Once again, we are out next week. So what is the next? If we're out next week, which means no episode on the 30th, we'll be back in your ears with a new episode on June 6th. So take the time off, get caught up with some other past episodes. Enjoy if you get a long weekend. And remember, this weekend is about memorializing, remembering those who have given their lives. Not all veterans, not all military members, those who gave their lives in battle, in the pursuit of freedom, defending this country. So take a moment and a little silent time and just thank those who've gone before us for doing that and making it so that we could have great podcasts like this. I use the term great loosely. All right, so we'll be back, like I said, then. Find us in the meantime on Twitter we are at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A.
And on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB with the A.
All right. We look forward to seeing you again with new material and updates to everything that we've talked about coming up on the 6th of June. In the meantime, have a great week, great weekend, and don't forget to swing away.